I'd like to call to order the December 8th board retreat. Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Jeter Freeman,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bozeman.
Yes. Will you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I now need a motion to adopt the agenda as printed.
So
I'll move.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Are there any changes? The only change I have, or did you have something to?
I was just gonna
So
say.
same one. I was just going to say that we often just put an executive session on the agenda just in case we need it, and in this case, we do not. So I'm going to remove the executive session from the agenda, which is item 3A. Are there any other changes to the agenda?
Who made the motion? Who made the
I
motion?
did.
Thank you.
Hearing none, Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mrs. Jeter Freeman,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bozeman.
Yes, the agenda has been approved with the amendments. I now need a motion for a loose meeting.
I'll move.
Second.
Been properly moved and seconded. Any questions? Ms. Allen, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Scares,
Yes.
Mr. Andrews,
Yes.
Mrs. Jeter Freeman,
Yes.
and Mrs. Bozeman.
Yes, so that has passed. We now have a loose meeting. That now moves us to item 2, which is the report card and district data review by the district administrative team.
I don't know why everything seems a little loud today. Good evening, board members. I would like to introduce our Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction, and he's going to come and talk to you all about our report card information, our data. It's Mr. Nathan Warner. You will, of course, have an opportunity to ask questions as we go along. He has a lot of information, and so he may move through it. If you have questions, since we particularly have a loose meeting, he will take an opportunity to stop and respond, or I will respond, or whomever on my team that is appropriate depending upon the question. So, thank you.
Good evening, board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for the opportunity to go over the district report card and the data review. And so, because you and I have not done this before, just wanted to let you know, like Dr. Cosby said, I have quite a few slides here. There's a lot of data. So I'm going to be moving through it. If you need for me to stop and kind of slow down on one particular one, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I'll keep moving. And I understand it's an open meeting, so we can have the discussion as we need to. So we'll go ahead and start from there.
Make sure it's turned on the side. Sorry. No, you're clear. Sorry.
And in particular, Mr. Warner, I don't know if you can just kind of start with where we are now.
Yeah.
And we can kind of go over the nationwide stuff ourselves. We've kind of read over that prior to. So we're interested in where we are now and then what we're going to be doing forward. So you don't have to be, kill yourself with all this other stuff, with the nationwide picture. Because we're familiar with that.
Gotcha. There we go. There we go. All right. So let me get some clarification. Are you interested, you want to talk about the trends of where we've been?
Yeah, we are actually, I think we are good with starting right where it says, where is TMCS now? And it says 2021 student achievement data. That's where we're good with starting right there.
So when we're talking data in Trotwood-Madison City Schools, we are talking not only report card data, but also benchmark data. And benchmark data particularly means in this presentation, the Nwea Map Data that's given 3 times a year. And it gives us a percentile of where our students are in rankings with other people around the nation and also where we've been historically. And so the point of this slide right here is just to show us that our students that are red and orange has grown from 18-19, or from the 2018 school year to the 21 school year. And so one of the things I wanted to say at the beginning of this is that while we're all sick of COVID, of talking about it, of dealing with it, it has had an impact on our school and our students and students nationwide and worldwide, really. And so we see that a little bit, that our students in the fall of 2021, we have more students in red and orange, more students that are in need of some intervention. So on the right side of this slide, this is again Nwea Map Data. The gold triangles are where we want to be. That indicates growth. So anytime you see a blue bar touching a gold triangle, that indicates that we have met the growth during that year. And so you can see on the 18-19 school year prior to COVID where we were, and then on the 2020-2021 with the COVID impact, how that has impacted us. And so we can see that there is some gaps there between where we're achieving and where we are actually supposed to be. So these are the state achievement results. So these are Ohio State tests. So in 3rd grade, the proficiency in mathematics and English, or English and mathematics, is 30 and 24. 4th grade, 31 and 23. 5th grade, 42 and 9. And then 5th grade also starts a science Ohio State test as well. And so there's 9% there. I'm sorry, there's 28% in the science and 9% in the math. Moving on to 6th through 8th grade, you have a 26% in English and 9% in math, 43% in the 7th grade and 17% in math, and 32, 10, and 40 in English, math, and science in the 8th grade. Algebra, and so these are end of course tests. And so they, when students end that course, they take this assessment here, and so you have, you can look down. I'm sure you don't need me to read all the way down through each one of those, but you can see where we're scoring on each one of those. Mathematics 1 and Mathematics 2 is not something we typically have offered, and so that's using algebra. So, but there are a few students that are in those classes. Gap closing is about making achievement or making growth with certain groups of students. And so there's the all group of students, and then we get points for closing the gap there. And then it goes down to through the subgroups of students. So American Indian or Alaskan Native, Black non-Hispanic, Hispanic multiracial, white non-Hispanic, and then also we're looking at economic disadvantage, English learners, and students with disabilities. In all of these, we did not receive any points for the gap closing in math or in English. And so we, out of 700 total points, we did not receive any in either one of these.
Can we go, since we're, board, do you prefer to just roll on and ask questions at the end?
I think we should just ask questions
Okay.
as they come up, because that way we don't have to go back.
Okay, so if we go back to the high school state achievement results,
Yes.
and we look at geometry, we look at math 1 and 2, those are so concerning that those I want to address now. So when we see that, because that is for this year's data, right?
Yes.
What are we doing? What are we doing there? And I think it was Ms. Appolita in today's DLT to say, first you look at teacher indicators, right? If all of those are in place, then you go to student. So I don't see the teacher indicators, and maybe we've looked at it, but we have to stop and pause when we see this. It's like, what do we do? Do we just shut down for a whole week and teach basic math? When I say do something different, we can go through here, but if we're not stopping to address the intentionality of moving those numbers, I am frustrated.
In that math 1 and 2, if you notice the number of students, is 4 who are in math 1 and 15 in math 2. If I'm not mistaken, that was a move to try to get those kids to do better. So, again, that's not as many. Now, geometry is 181 students.
Right.
That's a lot of students, and only 4% of them, are proficient. And so we are working on their math. You can address that, but I just wanted to make it clear that math 1 and 2 are not.
And I get it, those numbers were small, but it was still like we didn't move any. So in looking at this for me, we've got to look at the adult indicators for 181 students, where only 4% pass. That has to be addressed like yesterday. And so when it's presented today, it's like, Ms. Jeter Freeman, we looked at that, we looked at the teacher data, and this is what we are doing to address it. Because I don't want to roll through, because I could look at all of this on my own, but without highlighting where we have big red spots, and it's all big. And I, please, don't take it personal. It's just where I am.
If I could ask, because is there a way to determine how much COVID has caused the non-proficiency? Because we aren't proficient in anything.
And that's why the trend data was something that we wanted to share. We have been trending in this way, and it sort of has pushed why we're going where we're going. So he will, you can address some of that now, Mr. Warner, rather than wait till we get to it, since Ms. Jeter Freeman has asked a specific question.
Are you asking me to address Ms. Jeter Freeman's question first?
Well, just show the trend data, because he's asked that, and then I would say, if you could talk to.
And we'll definitely get to what are we doing as a district for some of this, but I hear what you're saying, Mr. Scares. I think the issue is that, we've had trend data that hasn't been great for a while. And there are places to celebrate. For instance, right here, fourth grade, I'm not sure if it's showing up there, here, fourth grade is a slow climb up. So there are places that it is happening, and then you can see what's happened in 2021. And so all of a sudden, you get a dip in 2021. And really, in 1920, we don't have any data, because remember, we didn't test that year, right? That was the first year that landed on us, that COVID landed on us. So there is some, prior to that, there is some indication that we jumped up. I know that you must be looking at what this is right here. These are about 3 students that were 7th graders that took the 8th grade test as part of their acceleration. So that's why they have jumped way up to 3 very bright students that have accelerated. So yes, COVID had an impact, but yes, we were also didn't have great data prior to.
Well, and I think my point is yes, we know COVID affected everybody in any kind of way. But how can we capture how COVID affected it? Like, we know the trend data was what it was, but to not be proficient in anything, right, it has to be, like, we have to have some sort of way to calculate how COVID affected it and how it will no longer affect it when it is, no more. Is that information that can be captured, that is captured, or we just kind of got to take it as it is?
I'm not sure that we'll know the full extent of how much COVID has affected us until some of these years go by and we get some research and some data back on these things. We know that the number one impact that can have on student achievement is what teachers do in the classroom. And so when teachers are not in the classroom with students in a traditional way, we know that that's an issue, and that's going to impact student learning. And so I don't think I have the data quite that you're looking for right now, Mr. Spears, but what we're going to do for it moving forward is try to move our teachers' ability to impact student learning.
So my last question, and I'll let you go on. So if we know that what teachers do in the classroom directly and immediately affects how children learn, what they process, we figure COVID was not a problem. Let's say it never existed, and the trend data is what it is. If COVID never existed and teachers in the classroom affect how kids learn, and which reflects in this information, what is happening in the classroom that causes the trend data to still be subpar?
Mm-hmm. That is an excellent question. I would like to just mention one thing that earlier on, even when we showed you that there has been some growth. Growth is great, but when our kids start as far behind as so many of them do, even growing 1 year every year doesn't get us to achievement. Achievement is where we're hitting, what everybody else is across the state. The 80%, is what has been determined. So that's why year after year, we're only making a year growth, or maybe we might get a little bit more than that. So it's important to know those differences. Growth is important, but we don't want growth, we want achievement. We want our kids to start to do significantly better. And we are looking at what's happening in our classrooms with their teachers. When we start to talk about all of this PD and things that we are doing for our teachers is to address that, what is happening in the classroom. So that is a major point in what we're looking at. I know you wanted to sort of share, and I know we're going outside of your
It's okay,
schedule.
I am flexible, so I just want to make sure that you all get the data and the review that you need.
Right, and so I think that if you could just tell them how you ended up understanding that teachers make the difference, but the top 4 things I think are extra important for them to understand that those are the things we're going to really hit this year. And then we can always, say, go on back.
Okay, so talking about what are we doing to improve student achievement? So I think all of our improvement efforts should reflect, these 5 things. So we're making sure that we're doing evidence-based practices. That has to happen. We can't just bring anything in. We need to make sure that we're bringing things in. These are evidence-based practices with studies behind them that we know make a difference. What we have to do has to be aligned to the CMC's Board of Education strategic vision. Alignment to the Ohio teacher evaluation system, clear expectations for implementation, and then also support for adult professional learning. It has to have all 5 of these things for improving student achievement. And so here, John Hattie is this researcher who has done meta-analysis over several thousands of research here. So his research is called Visible Learning, and it's 1,400 meta-analysis, 8,000 studies that encompass over 300 million children. And so what we know about this study is that he has put effect sizes for each intervention, or each plan, or each strategy, right? And so here are and there's hundreds of strategies that he listed in the study, and the effect sizes are in the end. So collective teacher efficacy is number 1 here. And collective teacher efficacy is the idea that as a teacher, I know that I know what good teaching is. I know that I know I can move student achievement. And so anytime that we're engaging teachers in understanding what they're teaching and how to teach and what the best practices are, anytime we're engaging it, we're building that teacher self-efficacy. And so that's become a big part of what we're doing, of our daily conversations with teachers and about professional learning in our schools. And so an effect size of 0.40 represents 1 year's worth of growth. And so 0.40 hits about that green line, that first dark green line, and moves up. Collective teacher efficacy is at a 1.57. So if we keep moving down the road of these effect sizes and doing these strategies and developing our teachers' collective efficacy, we have the potential of making more than a year's growth in 1 year. So it's going to depend on a few things, and so I kind of framed it around 4 E's for improving student achievement through the district, right? So one is elevating instruction. So we are involved in, right now, developing the Trotwood-Madison City Schools instructional framework, that we will take the practices that Hattie has in his study and incorporate it into a framework so that teachers, when they come in and say, this is how we teach students, this is what we believe about education, and this is how we're teaching students. We're looking at a vertical alignment of standards that from moving from one grade level to the next grade level, everybody knows what kids have learned before and where kids should be going. So that vertical alignment of standards, and of course, the Ohio State says those assess the standards. Instructional alignment of evidence-based practices. So we're making sure that, again, the evidence-based practices, we know that the things that we're doing in the classroom are not just research-based, they're evidence-based. We have a plethora of evidence to show that these are the best practices to do. And then the reset of literacy practices. And this is something that's happened nationwide, and particularly in Ohio right now. That letters training has been, it's crucial right now that we reset our literacy practices and that align to the science of reading, because right now they have not been, and it's nobody's fault. We all came up in a system that this is not how we were taught to teach reading, but we're responding to data now, and so resetting those literacy practices.
One question. How many times have we changed the instructional framework over the past 4 years?
So my best estimation, I'm not sure what existed prior to this, but I know that we engaged in understanding by design, UBD, in 2015, 2016, 2017, somewhere in there. And then we did a little bit of thoughtful classroom, and so what we're doing now is trying to come back and build something that's specific to Trotwood, so that it's something that is systematic and will last, and it's not wrapped into something into a program.
So let me say this, and it is not personal by any means.
I'm not going to take it with you.
You know, I've been here 4 years, and in that 4 years, we've changed instructional framework 3 times. So in just 4 years. And so every time we change instructional framework, we are, in essence, retelling teachers how they ought to be teaching. Am I?
More or less.
More or less. So every time we change the instructional framework, we are, in essence, telling teachers what you did before really wasn't working, right? And let's try it this way. And honestly, it almost kind of depends on who's in the leadership at the time, who says, well, this is the instructional framework that we say is best. And if by chance, you know, the two of you are not here in 2 or 3 years or whatever, I'm speaking hypothetically, there is someone that could come in and say, well, you know what, that instructional framework doesn't work. Now here's a new instructional framework. And I'm not a teacher, you know, I've never taught in a classroom, but I can only imagine how frustrating that would be to change the instructional framework every 2 years to reteach and to relearn something that probably won't exist in another 2 years.
Yeah.
Right, when I first came on the board, I had a suggestion because we did the report card thing once before when it first came out, and I feel like we're trying to change everything all at once. right? Not that we shouldn't, but we're trying to eat this entire elephant in one single bite, and we keep failing. Is there a possibility that we say as a district, you know what, for the next 3 years or 4 years, we're going to make an intentional commitment to just our mathematics program? Not that we're not going to focus on reading and everything else, but can we hone in and focus on just this or just reading or just whatever until that proficiency level raises to a point that is considered achievement, right? Then we can lock that in, go back and work on something else. I mean, I don't know.
Well, it's like you've been sitting in our
I was going to
meetings.
say, this is what we.
Go ahead, Dr. Adams.
No, I was just going to say, he's just telling us what we want to tell you. And the difference is, we are using, as he said, not just best practices that people talk about, but evidence-based things this time. And we're going to hold on them. And like you said, they're going to become a part of what we're doing. And we're doing it with our literacy first, because literacy is going to impact all of the other areas. So that is the plan. You can give more detail, but as you said, that's where we were as well. I think that unfortunately, like you said, the evidence has sort of shown that it hasn't been working, and we may have a year or two due to COVID, but we're going to have to hang in there because we know this works.
Yeah, so, you know, we have lots of money, I mean, just to put it mildly, coming into us through ESSER. And my concern is that one day that money dries up, right? Like, that's just not, it doesn't constantly happen to us. And so we want to build capacity. And so one of the things that we want to make sure, and what you spoke about, Mr. Scares, was really initiative fatigue. And our people definitely have it. And so we're changing things all the time. And we need to get to a point where our instructional framework is not built around this CAN program and that CAN program, but it's based around these things right here that we know are going to make an impact on our instruction and on our students. And these things are things that will not come and go. These things are known to be best practices. And so we're going to build our instructional framework around that. And once that's there, we build capacity to be able to do these things. And input, making sure that we have systems in place, that we know that there's a team of people that are watching the systems that are in place, that can say, we know that this textbook series that comes in, this has to come in, but here are the parameters by which it comes in, and we know that it's the best practice. We want to bring something else new in, then this district implementation team, they look at this and say, is this the innovation that we want in the district, and is this going to be something that we can sustain? It's evidence-based, it's good for students, it's good for staff, that we have the capability and the capacity to implement at this point. So some of the other things that we have to do is embrace the data. So creative is formative and some of assessment systems that we can give assessments, and we know where kids are. So we're not going to wait until the end of the school year to get an idea of, like, here is where our kids need help. This should happen on a regular basis so that we're looking at, at the teacher level, at the team level, what's happening in the classroom, what's happening at the grade level, and be able to put interventions in place for those students in responding to that data with instructional strategies addressing those weaknesses. And our assessment, they're going to have to mirror those state tests. We've gone other days where we can give true and false questions. That doesn't land on the assessments at the state level. We have to go deeper with our learning and how we're doing things. The third E, looking at executing systems, implementing Ohio's 5-step process with increased fidelity. So that piece of looking at data, responding to data, is a 5-step cycle, getting better at that. Selecting and normalizing, we've heard a lot about evidence-based practices already. And there are some things, to Mr. Scares' point, that you have to deselect. You're deselecting programs because we can't do everything all at one time. So there's going to have to be some conscious choice of moving away from something and toward others. That we're ensuring access to high-quality instructional materials, not just good things, but things that we know are good for kids, and developing multi-tier systems of support. And then the last part is about engaging culture. That's this growth mindset. And a growth mindset is opposite to fixed mindsets. So a fixed mindset says that you are what you are right now, and you're never going to be much more than that. but a growth mindset will look at children. We say that there are room for growth. When we look at adults and people in our organization, there's room to improve, and we know how to get you there. So it focused expectations for culture and supporting all staff and aligning professional development for teaching and administrative staff. So some of this, again, to Mr. Scarce's point, that initiative fatigue. So we're making sure that here is the expectation for teaching and instruction. Here is the strategy that you use. Here is the resource that you use to complete the strategy. And here's how you're going to be evaluated on it. And that coherence and alignment through that instructional framework is going to be really important for us moving forward. That everybody knows that's part of building our collective efficacy. Everybody knows what's expected of them at all times, particularly in regards to instruction. And then providing rich college, career, and interest opportunities for students. We want to make sure that, part of engaging the culture, engaging our students where they are and their interests in developing around that. I'm wondering if you have any questions with this slide or some of the things that I've said so far. Yes, sir.
As I'm looking at that and I'm looking at our results and things, I'm frustrated just like everybody else is and somewhat disappointed. But I'm thinking there's something else that needs to be addressed or at least needs to be considered to be addressed in this under engaging culture is we have to, I think, find a way to get our community and our parents more actively involved. And I'm not saying that like they're not, but I'm saying there should be something that is targeted and officially embedded in what we're doing to make sure that we are getting our community and our parents involved. Because a lot of these things are good ideas, and between the two of us, we probably have close to 60, no, more than 60, 75 years of teaching experience. But if we're not getting the engagement from outside of school, a lot of what we're doing is we're not going to realize the results we want to realize.
Yeah, thanks for that comment. So goal 3 in our district improvement plan is about family engagement. And there's family engagement, and it's a tiered system. And so family engagement means one thing to come out for a spaghetti dinner and come out for a night where your kids are singing. That's great. Like, people like to come to that, and that's really great. But there's different levels of family engagement too. And so just like we have different levels of kids in the classroom, we might have parents that we need to go to them to engage them with us. And so there are different levels. So we're building that family engagement piece into our district improvement plan. In fact, on December 16th and January 3rd, we'll have Dr. Boone from Ohio State University, who leads the family engagement partnerships that we have that's affiliated on the state support team. And they'll be out and they'll meet with parent engagers and principals as we develop building level parent engagement plans. And so that is definitely on our radar. It's something that we know that we need to engage parents with their help. Wondering what other piece of data that you want to see? Do you want me to move forward? Do you want me to go back and look at some of the data that's here, or?
On the parent engagement, you said he'll be out and he'll work with the parent engagers and the principals on a parent engagement plan?
On the building. That'll be some of the beginning of that work, yes, ma'am.
So what would that plan look like? What is our expectation of the product for what he will provide? So as a board member, we're gonna have him come in, he's gonna work with them. So what can I expect to see that I don't currently have? What will be put in place as a result of that?
So it's a whole framework that we're just now getting into. We have the high school and the middle school began some of that work last year, the year before. And And so this is a plan that we're beginning to develop at this point, part of that related to our district plan.
And I get that, but I'm tangibles. Parents will be invited to nightly, Mrs. Scarce will have invitations to go to Westbrook for, I'm trying to figure out what that engagement is gonna look like.
Sure, and I don't want to commit to something that hasn't been planned yet for a building. However, what I would envision it to be is that it is tiered, right? So continuing doing some of the engagement that we're doing, but also a time where we can help parents understand, how do you log into progress? Helping parents understand, how do you move your students forward in math? How do you tutor students? How do you engage with the community? How do you, what advocacy can you have?
Can I say something, Mr. Scarce, really quick?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, and again, this is not personal, but Ms. Jeter Freeman is talking about deliverables, and we've not had deliverables. We have had programming, and we've had new frameworks, but at the end of the day, what are we getting for the monies that we're spending, the time that we're spending, and the effort, or what can we expect to get? So not just hypothetical, not what we envision, but real deliverables. Parents are going to be doing this, teachers are going to be doing this, students are going to be doing this, and once those things are done, this is the expected deliverable or outcome. And we are forced to read so many words. I mean, there's just so many words on presentations and reports. But at the end of the day, what does it look like? What are we looking at? And that's why I'm looking at these slides and I'm trying to figure out, the 4 E's, they sound great. What does it look like? Not theoretically, but actual.
Yeah.
What I would like to say is that's what we are going to deliver to you. These two dates that we've gotten to have the opportunity to have these people meet, if we're going to have parents engaged and we're going to have parents talk about what they need, what they want, we're going to end up with that program, what it is that they can expect. If they say, I need help, with how to help my students in math, then we will provide that for them. I think that's when he says that's where we are. It's like we understand that we need to get that to you, but for us to just say it right now, because what we do know is that, to be honest, the top 5 things, and I'm on my little slide, if you could put up the big one. So teacher efficacy, when you say, what is it we're going to hit hard, that's the number one thing that matters, teachers believing that they can do their job with the kids that they have. The second thing is student expectations. So we have to work on our students, demanding more of their teachers, of us, of what is going to happen in their lives. Response to intervention, we work very well with that, and we will continue that. That's where the state support team comes in and, helps us with that, as well as, Ms. Mallory's work and the things that they're doing. And then student efficacy. To me, those things as a whole are what we have to work on. I don't know if you guys have heard it, but they've heard it ad nauseum from me. We are not going to move the district if our kids aren't wanting to be moved. So they have to believe in themselves, and they have to have high expectations. And so, yes, we're working with their teachers, but we also have to work with their students. And those are things we're starting to do. And we, as you know, we've asked that we have this, and we are going to have it, our students on our board. I'm meeting now with students at the high school. We are starting to do those things to get that student voice that we keep talking about. So it's not just something that I think is cool, it'd be cool to have, students have a little input. We have evidence that if students have high expectations of their education, of their teachers, of their buildings, then we tend to do better. They do better, and it forces us to do better. Student efficacy, to me, those things are just imperative. Teacher clarity goes along with, just this instructional piece we're talking about. Do the students even understand what the teachers are saying and doing? There's a lot to this because we're in a situation that's unique, which is why I think when we talk about making this relevant to Trotwood, every other district out there isn't like Trotwood. There might be some that are similar when we have to look at similar numbers, but for the most part, we do have a community of teachers who are teaching kids that they don't really know yet. We have to get them to understand that everything they say and do it matters. So they have to believe that they can make a difference in their kids, and their kids have to believe that they can too, and have to hold them to high expectations. So a lot of this is sort of,
Well, if I may, Dr. Cosby, I think what we need to, okay. This, you guys do have this done, okay? The thing is, we've been talking about this the whole time, at least I've been here, and you actually do have the information. You do actually have it all done, it's just all over the place, and you just haven't put it all together yet. So like, for instance, how we have these 4 E's. The 4 E's, we've been talking about this, it's just in different words. We've been talking about the same 4 E's the whole time, okay? So this is not new information. So all you have to do is operationalize it. So you just have to figure out, okay, so what are we going to do? What things are we doing to elevate instruction? That's all we're asking. What things are we doing to do that? So now that we know that that's one of the things that improves student achievement, and we've known that because we've talked about it like crazy. So, okay, so what are those things that we're going to do to reset literacy? What are those things what are we going to specifically do to create a growth mindset? We know those things, we know all these things work. All we're saying is, what are those specific things that are going to be done to create that? Those, you guys already have it. And so to say that we don't know is like, for real? Yeah, you do, because we've talked about it. So we know. It's just a matter of selecting a few, because you don't have to have them all, because you can't do them all. And that's crazy to even say that we can do them all, because we can't. But we can have a start, and we just have to choose which ones we think are most important. So, of course, the first one is going to be to let the teachers know that they can do it, to make the teachers believe, hey, teachers, you can do this thing, and put that first. What are we going to do to create that mindset in teachers? And then that's what we're talking about. What are we putting this in order? Because these words mean really, they're just a bunch of words.
I'm sorry, let me say.
Go ahead. Mr. Garrett.
When we talk about parent engagement, it is almost like evangelism, right? You have to compel them to come. That's why parent engagement is much higher when I got Kennedy and Olivia on stage singing songs in their pretty Sunday church dresses, and the auditorium is completely packed, versus reading night when you have a handful of students or a handful of families who not care more, but care a little bit differently, right? If we aren't using those opportunities to drill home, there's a saying that says people don't get what you're saying until you're tired of saying it, right? What are the opportunities that we are not capitalizing on, that we already know has incredible parental participation? We should be driving it home at football games, at basketball games, at Christmas at Westbrook or whatever. I'm just saying. And then I say often, it's not the board's responsibility to run day-to-day operations of the district, but it is the board's responsibility to make certain that day-to-day operations are ran well. And so, not that I don't think that the things like the instructional framework won't last beyond our tenure, all of our tenure. Maybe it's the board's responsibility to set in stone that this is the direction, this is the vision in terms of instructional framework that this board sets for the staff, its superintendent, and her cabinet to follow. So it does outlive all of us.
We can move past it.
So we can move past it,
Yeah.
and so it's not changing, every 2 years. Even if we find out in 10 years it doesn't work, at least commit to it.
Yeah.
that's our system.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good.
Wait time. So,
Yeah.
I think I hear you saying that, let's take one of these, like, what would that look like?
What are we going to do?
Yeah.
How are we going to operationalize it?
So the way that I see the instruction, go ahead.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have folks that keep coming in here doing professional development, and we're waiting for them to have the panacea of we're not? Okay, good. Because, and this is what I was saying.
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, this is what I was saying, when we were saying, so what are they going to do? And what does it look like? We have to give a directive and hire the people who are going to do what we need to have done. We can't just say they're going to come in and then we're going to compile it. It almost feels like we're flying the plane while we're building it. And we have to know that the parts and the structure and the systems are in place. Bring the right people in that are subject matter experts in what we're driving in this district and go from there. That's how they help us. That's how they understand what we need, because they're not in this district, we are. And I've been on the board for 16 years, and year after year after year after year, it's like we're always right here. And, and then it's a new slew of folks, and, we hear the same thing again. They just reword it like
And it feels like we're chasing after
it just
every
does.
time.
It just feels like we're chasing our tails. So, like Mr. Scarra said, there's an opportunity. I know other districts have done this, and I know we're not other districts. However, they focused on something. Sandusky, they met the graduation rate. That was their focus, okay? We're going to get it. They got it, I mean, they focused on, like Dr. Cosby said, literacy, okay? And we pushed it and we drove it. And then we go from there. That's all I'm saying. It's just
Yeah, and I
that,
think that you're right on. I think that you're right on, and I think maybe often we're all speaking the same thing, the frustration with something new all the time, and a new program coming in a lack of focus. It's what your teachers are saying too. They're frustrated with it too. It's what our principals are saying too. They're frustrated with a lack of focus, a changing all the time. We've heard it today, Ms. Freeman, Gina Freeman, she heard it today too. We've heard they're frustrated with things are changing all the time, and where can we get some consistency? And where can we get some coherence and some alignment? And that's where our staff is. And so, our focus is very clearly has been this year establishing, resetting our literacy practices and focusing on literacy. That's what we spent 3 hours today, really looking at literacy, some of this data, and then what can we do moving forward? And then also the development of systems to prevent something new coming in all of the time. I grew up professionally here. I didn't grow up here, but I grew up professionally here. So I was hired in 2003 and was away for a little bit and came back. So I have lived all these iterations of instructional improvement as well. And so we are all of the same mind that we have to zero in on something. And I think that's why, just for the instructional framework, for example, that has to be something, not that we go out somewhere else and purchase, but that we use experts who know who we can help guide, like this is what we need, and let's build this for organically what we need here, so that in 10 years, when all of us, or if all of us have moved on, that it can still be here, and then we might be able to tweak it here and there, but it stays the Trotwood-Madison instructional framework that is aligned with standards, effective practices, and evaluation. And that we can hold people accountable. And I think that's one of the things, like, what are we doing different? And I think it's that piece of holding people accountable and monitoring the plan. Making sure that here's the plan, and we're going to hold people accountable, and here's the checkpoints that we're saying, here's the implementation, and are adults doing? And I think that's going to be one of the things that we're looking at. Back to your point about parent engagement, I don't have some of those answers.
You talking to me? I'm going to go to the restroom. I'll be right back.
It's okay. We said it was an informal meeting. You're asking questions, and I'll just be honest with you, I don't have the answers to the questions about the parent engagement. We're just starting that work.
Yeah.
So we are, but it comes out of the idea that what we've been doing, parent engagement up to this point, we need something more. It's not meeting our needs. We need something more. So let's go somewhere else. And it's not just us involved in this network. It's people throughout Ohio.
Yeah.
And then maybe it's something we can do to bring in, and so that you can get more information about that, what that might look like. And I'm sorry, I don't have the answers to exactly what you're looking for tonight.
Yeah.
But I guess the thing is, it's not like we just came up with it tonight. We talked about the basketball games and all this. My first year on the board, first month, really, these are things and Dr. Cosby, I know you weren't here, I'm not talking to you today. I'm just saying, these are things that we have been literally, my first day on the board, we have been saying these same things. And I guess the interest wasn't there to think about parent engagement on that level. I don't know what it was. So none of this stuff is new. And I guess that's where you're hearing the, everybody, because it's literally what we have been saying for me at least 4 years.
You deserve to hear on a regular basis the updates of how things are going.
Absolutely.
That's part of the strategic plan. We should expect to be held accountable for doing that. And we should expect to hold each other accountable to do some of this work. And so I think that's what we want to do, is to move forward with, let's set the plan in place, and let's put these things in, and then let's start monitoring and holding ourselves accountable on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And that's what DLT is supposed to all be about.
On the parent engagement, let me just say this. So a friend that lives in North Bunch, her son is a 5th grader. For Halloween, they have a parent group. There's 6 for the school. She's one of them. For Halloween, they do a parade. The students dress up toward the end of the day. They all go dressed. They were preparing 500 bags. That's parent engagement. I don't know that I need to pay someone to come in and figure out parent engagement.
Yeah.
When my daughter was at Shallowview, we had math night. The principal had spaghetti. Parents came and they did math. So that's my, when I said that. And that's it.
I just want to say one other thing about parent engagement, and this is fact. Prior to getting on this board, I had children that were in the district, and I was the president of the parent engagement group in the middle school. We had over 80 parents that were highly engaged. I mean, weekly meetings, we established a charter, we worked with the superintendent then and board on directives and strategic plans. We had to have parents, people had to wait their turn because we had so many people who wanted to do things. Do you remember having the middle school dances? You know who put those on? The parents, in collaboration with the administrator and teacher. I mean, I didn't get paid for that. And the 80 parents that work with me didn't get paid for that. This is the principal, the building leadership saying, I'm going to get my hands around this piece. And then promoting, bringing in those active parents. Because here's the thing about parents. Parents know other parents. That's how the group got so big. I'm in this and I'm, Myra, come on over to this meeting. She tells Mr. Scaris and so on and so forth. Getting the synergy going. Parents say they want to do things, not just parents, but we have community people. How many times do you guys have community people walk up to you and say, how can I help? How can I be engaged? So a lot of times, I know we have the ESSER dollars and all of that, but sometimes it's not necessary to spend money. We can be creative in a way that motivates and encourages and inspires parents to be a part of what their kids are a part of. Put them on the stage, like Mr. Scaris said. And that's what we did. We highlighted their students. Parents will go when their students are highlighted. We've had board meetings here. We had the students read the mission statement. There's the parents, there's the family. We recognized the students at one of our meetings here recently. The audience was full. So, Dr. Cosby says, and you say this all the time, it's student voices. It's getting the students out front because the students will bring the parents. But we have to make room for that and space and opportunity instead of looking for somebody else to pay and to mold and model for us. We can do this. And that's what I'm saying because I've seen it done.
So, Mr. Warner, we can go ahead and let you go ahead and go to the part that says, what are we doing now?
So some of these are some of the new initiatives. You may have seen some of this already. This is what we're doing through the ESSER. So MTSS and literacy, that's some of the systems work that I've talked about already, and also the letters training, some of that's off and running, some also professional development offerings that we're doing. STEAM, let's talk about that for a second. So when I say STEAM, these are, again, not like one big STEAM initiative, but the idea that we're trying to push forward science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Okay, so we're trying to push those things forward right now. So one of the things we want to bring in is Project Lead the Way. Project Lead the Way is it's really a K-12 engineering program. And so if you can bring that in, it's not every day necessarily for kindergartners, but you can legitimately say to your community that we have a K-12 engineering program. And so this is, they're the nation's leading provider of science, STEM activity. It's curriculum-based, problem-based. I was thinking of STEM the other day when we had the colonel here talking about his robots. Those VEX robot kits are what is part of automation and robotics, which was planned in the 8th grade STEM class. And so, those are some of the ways that Project Lead the Way would offer a K-12 solution for us. And then, when we did this at other places, when you go to other schools, you have 3D printing happening in 6th grade, 5th grade classrooms. You have VEX kits, robots, the competitions that they're having. And so there's all kinds of different modules. There's a few modules in elementary, and then when you get to 6th grade, it becomes design and modeling, then automation and robotics, and then there's a host of other offerings that you can do. And then you get into the high school, and then you're looking at engineering courses that lead towards we're trying to say credentialing. Thank you. All right, so questions about Project Lead the Way?
We don't currently have that, right?
No, ma'am.
So is that a next year project, or?
Yeah, we will spend the second half of this year getting ready for that implementation, because you need a teacher. We identify a teacher to teach those classes. In both, started to talk about how we begin the implementation, and then we'll need a counselor trained in some of those things. And there's quite a bit of materials that you buy to get people ready for doing some of that work.
It is an expensive program. I've been involved with it before, but it definitely does pay for itself and what you get back for your students. I just read, and you may have read it in the paper, that Wayne is adding on to their high school to continue what they call in their career tech, but they did Project Lead the Way, and they've done it in 2 areas, engineering and in medicine. And that expansion is because so many kids got interested and involved in it. It was very expensive. They had to take space from other things to prioritize it. And so when we do something like this, there may be people who say, why are we doing it? Actually, at the time, it was the seniors' lunch space. They had their own special lunch space, had to be taken away for this program. And it definitely paid for itself and what it brought to the school.
How do we pay for it?
We can do the same. Well, we paid for it at the time. We got a grant, and so we were able to get started.
No, how are we going to pay for it?
How we have ESSER now. So
What happens when we
can-
don't have it anymore?
It will, hopefully, because you're going to get the interest in the students, you can get those grants. We can probably carry it. We'll have teachers who already know, because that's the expense. They have to go to training in the summers. The teachers have to, all these things that we can upfront with the money that we have, it carries over.
It's one of those things that there's an initial expense, and then once that initial expense is done, you have the robots, you have the.
Right, no, I understand the initial investment, right? I get the
That's
initial
the basic.
investment. But the initial investment has to come with a 2-year, 3-year plan, right, to be funded out of this particular fund. And if within that 2 to 3 year span, if this program is not paying for it, so we can't support such an expensive program on the general fund with everything else that we have in addition to it. So while I'm not opposed to making the initial investment in something that is, advantageous for us, just how do we sustain it after extra money is gone after 2024?
And, you know, what we are anticipating is that number of students who are interested in staying here in Trotwood would grow. You know, when we see that we get something that is exciting, that works, and is teaching these kids in areas that they're interested in, I
Well,
believe we can bring our kids back.
And I get that too, and I want it to be successful. I think a part of launching that program is forecasting what the expectation is, right? When I set out for my business what my year's gonna be for 2022, I'm forecasting at least the first 6 months based off the investment that I need to make. So if we say this program's gonna cost $500,000, or how much ever it's gonna cost, a part of that initial investment is forecasting who are we gonna target, what is the return on that investment over 1 year, over 2 years, and not just, it's gonna be an expensive program, we know it's gonna work without anything to back up our surety. Does that make sense? So, you know, for me, along with this program, Project Lead the Way, and I believe it's, you know, I trust your judgment about how good it is, I think it just needs to be accompanied with concrete numbers about how it's gonna cost, what it's gonna cost, the amount of time, when the ESSER dollars are no more, how do we substantiate this particular program so we can make, you know, a justified decision on, you know, paying for something like that.
I think we can do that.
Yeah.
I think it's sometimes tricky to talk about return on investment in education, because your investment is really good, right? And when the experience is the child.
The investment is twofold, and I don't disagree with you, right? But there are immediate returns to those investments that are not kid-specific. And so when I say, yeah, we all know the investment's gonna be great because of what we're doing for the child, but the immediate costs that are not necessarily child-focused, that we need to make sure that we get a return on investment. If we're expanding, what is the cost of that expansion? If we're taking up classroom space, what is the cost of flipping that classroom space to what we need it as? Like, those are costs that aren't necessarily child-specific in terms of investment that we can calculate immediately, you know?
Yeah, I think you're just saying forecast, so
Yeah,
that
just
it
forecast
is
that
built
whole-
into our 5-year, and we know where the dollars are gonna come from. I like the program, Project Lead the Way. CTC actually partners with quite a few schools to provide that. You could talk to Dr. Weldy. I know Northmont has it, so it is a good program, but, well, there's not a but. It is a good program, and there are grant dollars for all kinds of STEM. We do have a grant person, so we do expect that we will be looking and finding grants to provide funding for some of these specific programs.
So I won't interrupt you no more.
But the other thing, make sure you do, before we implement this, once you get that program together, once you've laid that out, please bring it back to the board so we can see the layout, the costs, and the projected implementation dates.
One of the things we want to do is look at our arts program and make sure that we are connecting with these students, providing them opportunities within the arts as well to experience new things and to develop their own talent. So one of the things we want to bring in is the residence arts program, that we have an artist in residence that comes and frequents our building. So they get exposed to real artists, artists in our communities that are doing the trade and have exposure to their art. Also, we would love to bring back our theater program. And so right now we have some of that at Westbrook, but if you remember a couple of years ago, we had a theater program there. So developing that theater program, we think would be something great for our students that would want to stay and explore those options. I see you have a question. Oh, no.
I love theater.
That was quick. Expansion of visual arts, opportunities for appreciation of the arts, and a dance program. We would love to bring those kind of things in because we believe that there are student interest in these kind of art programs. And we also believe that we have students leaving our district for other schools in the area, and we believe we can stop some of that leaving if we can develop our own programs. Questions about any of that?
I do believe that this is where you get that parent engagement that you were talking about. If my kid is involved in a dance program, I'm gonna come to that performance. You know, those drama clubs and plays, they bring out lots of things.
And once we pinpoint what our focus is, every single time we have that, we need to be getting before parents and saying, this is what we need you to do, right? It's almost like, I hate to say switch and bait, but you know, you have to press that.
Could I add on to that? Not just a switch and bait kind of thing, but if we get parents involved and they are enjoying what's going on and become enthusiastic about what's going on, then my experience has shown that many parents will look to become involved in other facets of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to be as well, and not just limit themselves to that particular activity. So those activities are a good inducement, but we have to be able to show them the other things that we're trying to do, and that will, I think, inspire folk to want to come in and help and support.
Remedies of Virtual Academy, so the vision was to bring students back from other virtual schools. What it ended up being right now is to stop the bleeding from us and for kids leaving our district for other virtual schools during this COVID era. What we want to do, and it's happened a little bit, I believe we have about 14 students from virtual schools that we pulled in for next semester. And so we're beginning to pull those kids in. What we want to do is make sure that we're accommodating students in other virtual academy or charter schools that maybe don't feel as comfortable coming into the building, but we can go out and pull them. And so what we want to do is have Ram Nation Virtual Academy staff go out and recruit those students. So we know who they are. Let's go out, let's make flyers and say, look, let's come back home kind of flyers. Let's go out and knock on doors and recruit these students to come back to our district. And then, that would be kind of like phase 2 that we're looking at, making sure that we're doing that. And then we would love for students to come back up to age 22, to persuade them to come back and work on their high school diploma and finish up there. And just to build that robust program that, you can go to another charter school online, but when you come back to Trotwood, you're part of Ram Nation Virtual Academy, you are a Trotwood brand again. And you can go to all of the activities. You can be part of Trotwood schools, and you come back home, where I would say you would belong, instead of being somewhere else. Careertech Pathway. So our current pathways right now are business and administrative services and agribusiness and production systems. Those are our current pathways now, where we have a CTE licensed teacher in there. Here are the proposed and exploring pathways, and I'm really excited about a few of these, particularly the early childhood education and teaching profession. I'm really excited about this part because one of the things that we keep seeing is teacher turnover, teachers coming in, staying for a little bit and leaving. But what if we had a program that we could start identifying kids at 7th grade who do not like to be in a music or art or somewhere else, and they would want to walk across the parking lot and step into a kindergarten classroom and help with literacy. And so instead of doing those, and that's just part of what they do for that elective. And then when they hit high school, now they're in a teacher education program where they're looking at maybe an elementary teacher or early childhood teacher taught by a Trotwood staff member who we know is successful and knows how to teach in our district, and we begin to grow our own. And we're really lucky to have places like things like Preschool Promise and Learn to Earn Dayton with us, who then also provide a pathway for our children to graduate, go into a teaching or paraprofessional kind of job in other places, and then they pay their college education all the way through. And if we keep in touch with them, then they just loop back with us, and we can put them back in the classroom. And so we're benefiting from our own investment in that student. So really excited about those things. We tried to start some of that when I was at the middle school as a principal and at the ELC as a principal, those kids coming back. And our little guys light up to see a a 13-year-old, a 7th grader come in, and the high schoolers come in, and that was really fantastic. I'm really excited to systemize this program and to move forward with it. Questions about that part of it? So another one that we want to bring in is logistics and supply chain. So if you're hanging around the supply chain world at all, you know that this is a major issue for us all over the nation. And so this is actually a pathway that we can explore, that supply chain piece, and we can get kids of jobs right out of high school right away if they have some of these pathways and they have this going on for them. And then engineering, science, and technologies, that's going to align with Project Lead the Way. And so that feeds right into that Careertech Pathway there. Any questions on the Careertech? New culture relevant resources, and so some of those are, we've updated you on that, what those works are, and then we've also heard the board's wish that we have an African American literature and history course that is part of what every child experiences. So we've heard you say those things. Ram's passport program. We're kind of running into some COVID-related issues here, but this is really our dream and our vision. So some of these things already are happening. So Caroline Park and Boonshaw Museum, and then coming to us, COSI, and then the HBCU visits, the Victoria Theater, and then in New York City Arts Tour. We're anticipating that submission for a field trip there this year, or actually next year, this school year, next year. And then we would love to see eventually more exotic things like space camp for some of our students who meet the qualifications to do that. We would love to see our ability to get students, even out of the country when it becomes safe to do those kinds of things, to get them experiences that they would not normally have here. And being able to use ESSER funds for some of this provides us a really rare opportunity to do some of those things. Any questions on this? And then non-academic supports that, non-academic supports, PBIS, social emotional learning, counselors, mental health therapists, social workers, student encouragers, parent engagers, resiliency coordinators, sort of practices. These are all things that our kids need. And if you're reading the papers, you know that mental health around the nation is an issue. And that's an issue for kindergartners as well as seniors. And so these SEL supports and non-academic supports are really helpful all around this culture of care that we want to do. And that's what I have so far. That, I believe, is the last slide.
I do have one question, and maybe I just missed it, which is quite possible. I was looking through here, and I was looking to see if maybe you had a comparison of what the report card looked at, measured previously versus how the report card will be changing or how it has changed, and then how those changes will impact us in the future. It's supposed to be less biased. And I didn't know if you had that. I didn't see it. And again, I could overlooked it, and I didn't know if you had that information. And if not, perhaps you could maybe include that later.
Yeah, I think that's a whole other presentation. How the report
okay.
card's changing, and we'll go to a star rating instead of a ABC
Right.
rating.
And even if you just talk, and you don't have to explain it, because I know how complicated that part can be. But I was more interested in how maybe some of those, how they've supposedly adjusted some things so that it will impact us differently, us meaning schools that are marginalized.
Have you given any information?
Well, they are working on it. They are supposed to be saying that they're making it, like I said, easier for us to share with our community and show the growth that we're making versus maybe the achievement. Personally, for me, going from A to
Same as 1 through 5.
exactly,
Yeah.
doing stars, or doing
Absolutely.
anything like that, that in itself is not going to be the deal maker.
Right.
So it is still a work in progress. I mean, I guess we would say that it's very positive that at least they're listening to the fact that everybody doesn't start at the same place. We talk about equity a lot, and so that is supposed to be one of the things that's taken into account. One of the things they're doing is everything isn't getting reported on a report card, you know, as a A, B, or C. Even if it's mentioned, it's not like held against you. So that way people might see it, but understand that it's, you know, so different district to district that it's not fair to compare them when we have equity issues. So I hope that they continue that.
And let me add to that. What happens in the state legislature is not by accident, right? I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't understand that legislators are lobbied to create certain legislation, and developing those relationships with our local legislators is really important, right? So if the law doesn't fit, I mean, because this is what happens every day, if the law doesn't fit where it makes us better than where we are, then you change the law. And the only people that change the law are the legislators. And a part of our responsibility, really kind of the political side of this thing, is creating those relationships, having those conversations. If you voted for one of those legislators, talk to them, call them on their cell phone, hit them up on Facebook. This is not working for us, right? This is not working for us. Don't be afraid to foster those relationships. Call Willis and tell him this is not working. Make him earn that seat, right? Call Rodney, who's our state rep for the 43rd district, and tell him this is not working for us. And be serious about that, and tell them to create the legislation that helps us prosper. Because right now it's helping everybody but us.
Yeah, and we do have meetings with our legislators, and we talk to them. But again, everybody doesn't have the same interest. We don't always have the same interest. So you're right. We, as a community, have to fight for ourselves, because oftentimes we're in those meetings, and you know, I speak out and say something, and there are, you know, 5 other superintendents there who don't have the same issues that we do, and it's very hard to get, you know, but trust me, I know I do it. I'm sure we have a lot of people here who are involved in legislation and talking with their congressmen. So yes, I agree with you. And I appreciate your introducing me personally to Mr. Creech. I had met him before, but being introduced to him personally and having had some conversation with him, he might be someone that you can, you know, we can encourage to see us in the light that we should be seen.
Yeah, he was at the dinner,
Yeah, the
and
dinner.
I did talk to him, and he did provide his card and say, hey, that's my job. If you see me, ask me what you need. So he was very approachable.
Yes, and he bid on a basket that had Trotwood gear, so I anticipate him going out and showing his support.
Right.
Mr. Warner, you mentioned, well, we were talking about the Careertech, and I was just curious because we had the international president of the IUE CWA, Carl Kenneberg, come out, and he did share with this board that, yes, we're looking at being a partner in his school or in his program, but he said that there was an opportunity for our juniors and seniors now. Have we followed up on that?
He and I spoke briefly, and we're making an appointment to come and talk together about what that looks like. Definitely an opportunity we want to explore.
Yeah, we don't want to miss it, and I guess that's what I'm saying. You know, like, it was hard to connect with him initially. Dr. Cosby, remember trying to set it up? We don't want the year to end.
Right.
And then it not happen. You know, a lot of times we're out in the community. I passed along Don, I forgot Don's last name, Dr. Cosby. He was a retired police officer.
Right.
He had reading materials for Trotwood, very enthusiastic about it. And I know that Dr. Cosby was passing that on to you.
Yes,
And
ma'am, I have an appointment with him tomorrow, then too.
okay, thank you. It's just that we have to have suspense dates. We can't say, we're going to meet with somebody. We have to have a date, we have to have a time, or the year will be over, our juniors and seniors would have missed the
I'll
opportunity.
make sure you have an update after my meeting.
Please.
Through Dr. Cox.
Please. And you know what we're going to do anyway, President Bozeman, we talked about this, we're going to put updates on the agenda. I mean, because we talk about this stuff, and then we forget. I mean, I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, 2 weeks goes by and it's something else. So we will make sure that we are holding everybody accountable for information that they share with us and that they would follow up.
Anything else more for Mr. Warner?
May I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
I know the data's hard to look at and hard to interact with. We have sat in it, all year and all week, particularly looking at, getting ready for the presentation. I don't want you to think that we're without hope. I don't believe that. I believe that we can make a difference. I believe that we can move the scores. I believe that when we put these strategies in place, that we can move students, because I've seen it done, because I've been able to do it in the classroom, because I know colleagues that have done it in here, in these classrooms with our students. We're not without hope, and we can do this. And I think that in the next few years, we're going to see a return. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warner.
Okay. Is there anything else, Board?
I just want to make the board apprised of a conversation I had with Bev Meyer about tuition reimbursement for the board. We're having that conversation now. She's working on a resolution about some of that information. So I don't want it to be a surprise. I've spoken with OSBA. It is something that is done quite frequently amongst boards in Ohio. It's not considered compensation. It is considered reimbursement. So just kind of FYI.
Tuition reimbursement for the board?
For the board, that is correct.
Yeah.
Is there particular classes that would count? or-
So that's what we're talking about now. She's asked me for a list of, what courses would we say reimbursement is for, what is the amount. I suggested, well, whatever the amount is for our staff currently, should be whatever it should be for board members. But all of that is I'm waiting for her to give me the list back so we can identify what those parameters are and have that resolution probably by the next time we meet.
That's interesting. Thank you. Anything else? If there is nothing else, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any questions?
Just a comment, I want to thank Mr. Warner and his staff. That was a lot of information
Thank you.
together and put
Thank you.
together. So we do appreciate that.
Thank you for all your hard work. If there's nothing else, Ms. Allen, please call the roll.
Mr. Scares?
Yes.
Ms. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Andrews?
Yes.
Mrs. Jeter Freeman?
Yes.
And Mrs. Bozeman?
Yes, meeting adjourned.
Dr. Cosby, can you come over to the board, please?
Have fun.
Hey, Mr. Andrews?
Thank you.
Thank you so